The courthouse in Tampa, Florida, had seen its fair share of high-stakes legal battles. But this morning, nothing could have prepared anyone for what was about to unfold. The atmosphere was charged as Judge Alan Prescott, a man known for his stern demeanor and rigid insistence on courtroom decorum, prepared to preside over what was billed as a routine hearing. In his mind, he believed he could easily silence any dissent with a few well-placed fines. Today, however, he was about to learn that some challenges could not be muted so easily. Pam Bondi, a formidable attorney with a reputation for relentless advocacy, stepped through the heavy wooden doors of the courtroom. Dressed impeccably in a tailored blazer and crisp white shirt, she exuded confidence and authority. But it was the small gold cross, resting boldly on the lapel of her blazer, that caught Judge Prescott's attention. A symbol of her personal faith and a mark of conviction she had worn without hesitation throughout her career. As Pam made her way to the defense table, the judge's eyes were fixed intently not on her face, but on that cross. The courtroom, filled with murmuring spectators and attentive legal professionals, seemed to hold its breath. With a controlled but cutting tone, Judge Prescott cleared his throat. "Miss Bondi, I must remind you that religious symbols have no place in my courtroom. You are required to remove that cross or face a fine." A ripple of astonishment passed through the few spectators. Even the court clerk exchanged uneasy glances with the bailiff, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. But Pam Bondi did not flinch. Standing upright, she responded with measured calm. "Your Honor, I must respectfully disagree. My cross is no different from a wedding ring or a family locket. It is a personal expression of faith, fully protected by the First Amendment." Judge Prescott's face darkened as he banged his gavel sharply. "Then, Miss Bondi, you leave me no choice. You are fined $500 for disregarding the neutrality of this courtroom." The sound of the gavel's strike echoed through the room, punctuating the moment with finality. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Pam Bondi's colleagues exchanged glances, and even a few spectators recorded the incident on their phones. Yet, despite the shock and murmurs, Bondi's expression remained cool and resolute. Without a moment's hesitation, she stepped forward. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and unwavering, "if I am to be punished for exercising my constitutional rights, then I intend to challenge that fine formally and put this issue on the record." A brief pause followed as Judge Prescott's stern gaze flickered over her. "This hearing," he retorted, "is about a corporate dispute, not your personal grievances." His tone was dismissive, as if he expected her to comply without further argument. But Pam Bondi was not one to back down. "With all due respect, Your Honor," she continued, "I have the right to express my personal beliefs, just as I have the right to advocate for my client. The law does not require me to shed my identity when I enter this courtroom." She then reached in her briefcase and carefully removed a single sheet of paper. Placing on the table before her, she spoke slowly, deliberately. "Under the First Amendment and established case law, Tinker v. Des Moines and West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnette, personal expression is protected even in government institutions." Judge Prescott's eyes narrowed as he leaned forward, his fingers drumming on the armrest. "This courtroom operates under my authority," he declared, "and I maintain that your religious display disrupts the required neutrality." Yet, as the tension grew, it was clear that his argument was crumbling under the weight of Pam Bondi's calm defiance. The hearing continued, but the fine was no longer the focal point. Throughout the session, every time Judge Prescott attempted to steer the discussion back to mundane procedural matters, Pam Bondi's poised presence reminded everyone that she was there to challenge not only a single fine, but a broader injustice. Every objection and every misapplied ruling seemed less like isolated errors and more like deliberate acts designed to silence her, and perhaps others like her. The case at hand involved Titan Digital, a multi-billion-dollar tech conglomerate accused of severe ethical violations, from mass data privacy breaches to manipulative tactics that force competitors to close their doors. While the corporate dispute was the nominal subject of the hearing, It soon became apparent that the real drama was unfolding on a different stage: the struggle over judicial authority and personal freedom. During witness testimony, Pam Bondi's arguments were methodically dismantled by her opponents. Special Agent Daniel Briggs, a seasoned officer with years of service, testified about a raid where a suspect had refused entry after reading a Know Your Rights guide, distributed, he noted, by Representative Ocasio-Cortez's office. John Vance, the defense attorney, whose measured tone and calm presence had already unsettled the judge, pressed Briggs on constitutional rights, highlighting that the absence of a judicial warrant allowed the suspect to lawfully refuse entry. Every time the prosecution tried to frame these actions as obstruction, Vance countered by insisting that adhering to constitutional protections was not a crime. Witness after witness took the stand. Officer Daniel Reynolds described a chaotic raid thwarted by a human blockade of protesters citing their rights. A former Titan digital compliance officer, Sarah Levine, recounted emails and internal discussions that revealed the company's deliberate efforts to skirt regulatory oversight. And a cybersecurity analyst detailed how Titan Digital's algorithms were engineered to manipulate user behavior. In each case, the prosecution sought to portray Titan Digital's actions as not just unethical, but illegal. Yet, John Vance consistently returned the focus to a critical question. If a company operates within the bounds of its legally disclosed practices, even if those practices exploit legal loopholes, can it truly be condemned as a criminal? Unethical behavior, he argued, is a matter for regulatory reform, not criminal prosecution. His pointed questions began to sow doubt among the jurors, who were already struggling to reconcile the stark divide between legality and ethical responsibility. Then, in a stunning twist that would forever alter the course of the trial, John Vance produced a folder from his briefcase. With calm precision, he handed it to the court clerk, who swiftly delivered it to Judge Prescott. As the judge flipped through the folder, his composed facade cracked. The documents revealed that the defense attorney was, in fact, the sitting Vice President of the United States, a revelation that sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Reporters, jurors, and even the prosecutor, Linda Pruitt, were left momentarily stunned by the revelation. Judge Prescott's voice wavered as he finally spoke. "Vice President, you should have disclosed your identity at the outset. For procedural misconduct, I hereby fine you." The vice president accepted the fine with a disarming calm. "I accept the fine, as it is my legal right," he stated, his tone measured and resolute. This moment of vulnerability from the judge exposed the true dynamics at play in the courtroom. The remainder of the trial devolved into a profound debate on the limits of government authority versus constitutional freedoms. John Vance argued that if the law did not explicitly criminalize certain actions, even those that might appear ethically questionable, then penalizing them would only set a dangerous precedent. "We are not here to punish behavior that adheres to the letter of the law," he told the jury. "If the law is insufficient, then our duty is to reform it, not to scapegoat those who operate within it." After hours of heated exchange and impassioned closing arguments from both sides, Judge Prescott finally dismissed the jury for deliberation. The courtroom's tension was almost tangible as every attendee, from legal analysts to everyday citizens, sensed that this trial was far more than a dispute over corporate practices. It was a referendum on the nature of judicial authority itself. When the jury eventually returned with a verdict of not guilty on the charges of corporate misconduct and unlawful data collection, the courtroom erupted in a cacophony of reactions. Some gasped in disbelief, while others nodded in quiet relief. Linda Pruitt maintained a stoic expression, masking the disappointment that flickered in her eyes, and John Vance offered a subtle nod, as though he had long anticipated this outcome. Outside, as media vans swarmed the courthouse and social media buzzed with heated debates, the headlines proclaimed, "Titan Digital cleared, a battle of ethics versus law." The trial's legacy sparked nationwide discussions. Should companies be punished for actions that, while ethically dubious, are technically legal? Or should the law itself be reformed to close the gaps that allow such behavior to thrive? In the aftermath, John Vance gathered his papers and walked out of the courtroom with measured stride, his quiet words resonating with everyone present. Today is not about punishment, it is about progress. Let this trial be a call to reform our laws and protect the rights of every citizen, he declared to the gallery before departing. For Pam Bondi, the fine and her courageous challenge had become more than a personal victory. It was a turning point, a public declaration that no judge, no matter how high-ranking, could silence the fundamental rights guaranteed by the Constitution. Her small gold cross, which had once drawn scorn and fines, now shone as a beacon of resistance and the enduring power of personal belief. As the courthouse doors closed behind the departing figures, the nation was left to ponder the implications of the trial. The Titan digital case had evolved from a corporate dispute into a landmark moment on the balance between ethics and legality, a moment that promised to reshape debates on corporate accountability, regulatory reform, and the protection of constitutional rights.